I'm Pastor Ted, and today I want to talk to you about the relationship between feelings and obedience. You know, there'll be many times that we won't feel like obeying God. In those situations, there will be a great tension between our feelings and our duty to obey. You know, the disciples of Jesus were caught in such a situation in Luke chapter 17, verses 3 through 10, when Jesus had just given them a difficult command to obey. There, Jesus gives them a command, but the disciples were hesitant and found themselves without the feelings and inspiration to do it. Have you ever been in that situation? Of course. And so the disciples, they asked Jesus in verse 5 for an increase of faith. They wanted to obey his commands, but they couldn't find the inspiration to act on it. Now, if you're meeting in a group, you can pause now to read Luke chapter 17, 3 through 10 together. To be honest, their request for an increase of faith sounds reasonable to us, but Jesus does not grant it. Instead, he tells them a story of a farmer who had a servant working out in the field. To the disciples, this parable is easy to understand. It's about a common situation or experience of working hard. In fact, the servant's day does not seem to end as he works all day in the field and then even after when he comes into the house to cook the master's food. With this analogy, Jesus brings out a work ethic of working hard regardless of how one feels. You know, the assumption is that the servant is tired and probably does not feel like doing the unending list of chores, but he does them anyway, simply because it is his job to do so. With this illustration, Jesus concludes in verse 10 with a very strong connecting phrase, "So you also." And so the application is made clear to the disciples that they must also obey God's commands regardless of how they feel, simply because it is their duty to obey. Now, this parable is intended to be a simple message, yet I have found in my ministry experience that even this simple concept is often misunderstood. I believe it's largely due to the fact that we have an overemphasis on inspirations or feelings as a prerequisite to obedience. And that if we do things without our feelings, why then we'd be a hypocrite. You know, it's rather interesting how we talk about the dangers of hypocrisy, that if we obey God and the desire is not there. We say things like, my heart is not there. And if I do what God tells me and my heart is not there, I'd be a hypocrite. Now, it's true that hypocrisy is a problem. But hypocrisy comes from a sinful heart with impure motives. Hypocrisy describes the Pharisee who prays standing up in the street corner. He's not really praying. He just wants people to see him and give him credit and honor. He has no interest or concern for God. That's hypocrisy. But Luke chapter 17 is not about hypocrisy. It's about the disciples who really want to obey the command, but are seeking an inspiration to do it. And to this, Jesus is simply saying, just obey. Like that multitasking servant. Just go out there and do your job regardless of how you feel. Does that make sense? The truth is that we already apply that into every area of our lives because it does make sense. Isn't this how we really live our lives every day? For example, we go to work whether we feel like it or not, right? I mean, there's so many days we don't want to even get up. I mean, we get up in the mornings and most of the times we won't be inspired to go to work. Now, some of you might be, but you'll snap out of it. You know, when I first got this lawnmower here, I was so excited to cut the grass, Every chance I got, I went out there and cut the grass. But I soon snapped out of it. Those excited feelings of cutting the grass was gone, and it became a chore. Here's the point. Work is hard, and you won't always wake up wanting to do it. Now, if you wake up and you are really tired and you really don't feel like going to work, but if you still go to work and work hard, does that make you a hypocrite? Think about it. It doesn't. It doesn't make you a hypocrite. It makes you committed. Committed to do your duty regardless of how you feel. If you're meeting in a small group, you can pause now to give examples of everyday responsibilities that we do regardless of our feelings. What's in your list? Washing dishes, homework, spiritual things too, you can mention. Discuss the theology of doing the right thing regardless of how you feel. Pause now. Hey, isn't this the example that Jesus himself left for us? Remember the sacrifice, the suffering, the fatigue, the hunger, and the distress of having to give up his life. Those negative feelings were so strong that he asked for that cup to be taken away from him. Remember? But still he stayed focused and declared that not his will be done, but the Father's. So consider today Jesus as the ultimate example of true obedience. Well, that's it for today. Until next time, may God give you a strong work ethic. And remember that there is a greater purpose for your life. You gotta go.
Thanks for joining us for a devotional drink today. If you love almond lattes, click here to subscribe so you know when the next one is ready to enjoy. Visit our website for resources for every chapter of your life. And if you're thirsty for more, click here. See you next time. May God bless your day.